You're listening to Consulting Logistics, presented by Aborn and Company. I'm Tim Dooner. Welcome back, or thanks for joining us for the first time. On this episode, we're going to cover some of the issues affecting the shipping industry as well as breaking news. But if this is your first time, you can go back and listen to all of our old back episodes at abornandcompany.podbean.com. In our previous episodes, we had Jill Carney. She was on episode 1, and on the second one, Rich Bullman joined us from BOC International to talk about contract pricing. We're going to continue doing shows with outside guests, but we're also going to be doing some internal news reports, covering some of the blogs and articles that we cover on the website. To visit our website and read those, you can go to abornandco.com, abornandco.com/blog. And the show is available on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and everywhere podcasts are played around the world. Let's jump right into it. Recently, there was an article going around by the Washington Post. It got a lot of traction. Incredibly interesting article. Informative, but the one issue I had with it, and I have with many articles, is they present a problem, right? They tell you that something's wrong in the industry. Insofar as trucking, that would be with capacity and the driver shortage. We all know we've been paying a lot more for freight. It's been a tough year. A tough 14 months, actually, as we'll get to in our second report today. But I wanted to give a bit of a solution, too, to listeners and to readers of the blog. So if you are paying this much on freight, there are still other ways that you can save money as a shipper. And the blog that we'll be starting off with, and this, again, is available at abornandco.com/blog. This is the truck driver shortage and the rising cost of everything. In 2018, shippers are paying more for freight that takes longer to move. Well, bad weather and ELD implementation exacerbated the issue. The reason rates have remained high points to a much greater problem. There simply aren't enough truck drivers in the United States of America. A growing economy propelled by online sales, low unemployment, and a booming stock market is intersecting with a shrinking truck driver pool. Joyce Brenny, head of Brenny Transportation in Minnesota, told the Washington Post that her company increased driver pay 15% this year to try to attract more drivers. Many of her drivers now earn more than $80,000, yet she still can't find enough people for the job. According to government labor statistics, many in the trucking industry are paid far less, and even more are dissatisfied with the solitary, nomadic gig. And I believe the median on that was around 42,000. So the actual driving pool, the guys behind the wheel, the rigs, they're not really making 80,000. They're seeing the new guy come in and get that. So I don't know how well it's going to sit with your existing pool if you bring in one and two leave. I was at Connect's 22nd annual Trade and Transportation Conference last April. And at that conference, it was clear just how wide-sweeping this issue was. Greg Ritter, Chief Customs Officer at XPO Logistics, warned of industry short-sightedness. He said, "The larger carriers are consolidating and buying smaller carriers, not for their book of business, but for their drivers. What's most concerning about this is that not only does consolidation not add drivers to the marketplace, it may further deplete the pool of available drivers." According to Fleet Owner, truck driver retirement rates jumped to 33% last year, up from 22% in 2014. Unlike in the past, where workers would move to a new company when theirs was bought out, many are now avoiding the hassle entirely and quitting the business. Bob Costello, chief economist at the American Trucking Association, recently told the Washington Post that in 2016, the United States was short 36,000 truck drivers. That number grew to a shortage of 51,000 drivers in 2017, and it only looks to be higher by the end of the year. Self-driving trucks, they may be the future of the industry, but not only are they years away from making a dent in the situation, they may currently be fueling the crisis. Young Americans have seen what disruptive technology can do across all industries, and many feel that there is no long-term future behind the wheel of a big rig. Escalating driver pay and raising fuel costs ultimately mean higher consumer costs as shippers pass along the buck and charge more for goods. Dry goods have already eclipsed past highs as rates climb north of $1.85 a mile. a 40% increase from a year ago, according to DAT Solutions. Consider this. Transportation and logistics account for roughly 10 cents of every dollar. Drastic cost increases in the freight market can have a butterfly effect throughout the economy. I don't normally speak in hyperbole, but we're entering some uncharted territory. Donald Broughton of Broughton Capital, and author of the Cass Freight Index, said to the Washington Post. If there is a 10% increase in transportation costs, that gives you a 1% increase in inflation for the broader economy. That's real, end quote. So how can shippers save money on freight and mitigate some of these costs? We know there's a problem, but we don't get paid to tell you there's problems. We get paid to come up with solutions. Well, the best place to start in a situation that's out of your control is by getting a handle on what you can control. Use data to your advantage and drive value out of your existing supply chain. Seek alternative routing options and explore opportunities to consolidate. And most importantly, and I can't stress this enough, develop strong carrier relationships by negotiating beneficial long-term contracts. Carriers are starting to pick shippers of choice. If you do not treat your carriers well, they are not going to pick up your freight because there are more loads than trucks. It's that simple. Carriers themselves. Carriers need to get more creative and should start embracing and investing in tech that is available now. While driverless trucks may be 5 to 10 years away, there are opportunities being developed by companies like Uber that could limit truck idle times. For example, Uberized Freight would use app-based technology to match cargo with empty spaces on trucks. Just as carpooling isn't a new concept, neither are truck consolidations. They'd simply be going digital. With demand expected to outpace new drivers throughout the year, we expect the cost of freight to rise. This holiday season, shippers who aren't proactive will be delivering late freight at higher rates. And that's something none of us can afford. Now, we mentioned the Cass Freight Index in that blog and in that report. Right after I wrote that, they released their latest index. And for shippers out there, the news isn't great, and the headline will tip you off on that. Truckload pricing reaches highest level since deregulation, according to new report. Truck pricing trends have continued to accelerate since November, according to the May Cass Truckload Line Haul Index released by Broughton Capital, the same group that was in the Washington Post article and who we quoted as well. This marks the 14th month of positive growth for the index, which now sees a 9% increase in year-over-year rates. In addition, Broughton Capital projects a 6 to 8% increase in their contract pricing forecast for 2018. I was just at another conference, Chanalytics. They had speakers from their group talking there. They were talking in the 4 to 5% range, so Broughton is seeing it go even higher. And if you look at the index on here, and again, go to abornandco.com/blog. We have all the graphics and everything on there. But when you look on there, I mean, this chart is, it looks like a bunch of jagged teeth, you know? It's up big and it fell down where the recessions came in, but now it is up. And it's way above the level that it's been in the past. What's that due to, though? We said a number of things. So, increased crude oil prices, right? A robust consumer economy and an influx of investment capital converge on an upside-down market that has more loads than trucks to haul them. Curiously, though, a lot of people have been pointing at ELDs. ELDs are always mentioned as a cause, but this report finds that ELDs may not be the primary pain point for some carriers. Broughton Capital's report finds that while dry van and reefers have adapted well to the new technology, flatbeds are really the only ones who are struggling to keep up. We thought it was across the industry, at least we were for a little while, and that's what was being reported, but it seems like the catch-up time has not been that bad, except in that flatbed market. The thing that's causing all this, the main thing, I mean, diesel fuel's going up too. You drive past the pump, it's unavoidable, but capacity, that's still the number one issue causing rate escalation, because it still goes back to the same thing. There's more loads than trucks. When there's more loads than trucks, prices go up. We end up where we are today. Well, with demand for trucking looking to remain strong, both spot and contract rates are expected to grow stronger as well. Intermodal. People have been putting it on the rail. People have been finding other ways to move things, trying to avoid trucks as much as possible to get some cost relief. Well, bad news for you, because shippers looking to explore intermodal options are finding little cost relief in the intermodal market. That index is nearing all-time highs as well. Broughton Capital's latest data shows total intermodal pricing increase rose an outstanding 9.1% year over year in May. So they got you coming or going. What can you do? Well, in the other article, we touched on looking at data. But the main thing to do right now, at least what I would do and what I would advise you to do, is to start speaking with carriers or speaking with a transportation management firm that can speak to carriers for you and start forging these relationships, especially in a situation where we know for a fact spot and contract are only getting worse, and spot rates grow at a faster rate than contract rates. So that is something to really consider because it's going to go throughout the year. When will it relieve itself? I don't know. Are we seeing a lot of people line up to take these trucking jobs? We're not. So these two reports are tied together. I mean, they are bedfellows, strange bedfellows. You can't kick one out without having the other. If you guys need some help with that, reach out to us. info@abornandco.com. You can reach out to me directly, tdooner@abornandco.com. That's TDOONER @ABORNANDCO.com. We've got some news to cover as well. Half of organizations set for procurement and supply chain AI investment within 2 years. A worldwide study of supply chain, procurement, and finance business leaders has found that 55% of organizations are set to make a major investment in artificial intelligence over the next 2 years. And this report was in supply chain digital, with an additional 25% planning to test AI in similar programs. In fact, only 20% of businesses plan on making no investment in AI at all. However, despite such a large number of firms willing to adopt AI, 59% of respondents believe that poor quality data will limit their ability to get any value out of their investment in AI. And we see that all the time, right? A lot of systems that we're using, they don't tie into each other. A lot of information is sort of held in secrecy and none of it is in its own ecosystem. So in order to kind of use AI and things like blockchain that we talk about, there has to be at least a bit more transparency between internal departments and shippers, carrier partners, that kind of stuff. But, this stuff is definitely becoming mainstream. AI is becoming mainstream. Blockchain, it's all you hear about at conferences now. It's the buzzword on the tip of everyone's tongue. So maybe we'll see some changes there. Transportation is a field that needs tech injected in it, and it's happening one way or another. Areas where respondents believed AI could have the most impact are supplier disruption and compliance issues, quickly identifying instances of fraud, invoice processing, automation, and approval of proposed purchases. Uber Freight targets small trucking companies. Uber Freight added their Fleet Mode tool to their digital load board freight matching app on Monday. The Fleet Mode tool targets operators with 10 or fewer trucks, which solves a critical issue with the app. Here's the issue. Here's what Eric Burdinas told Trucks.com. Quote, "After launching Uber Freight, we had a lot of small fleets wanting to work with us, but couldn't because the app was designed for owners with one truck." So Uber is looking to capture a $676 billion freight business where nearly 90% of all motor carriers operating in the US have 6 trucks or fewer. So it's a good flaw to fix, right? I wasn't aware that they could only pull 1 truck at a time either. So it looks like they were piloting the program last year and it's getting to be something that's actually usable now. And I think that now that they have this 10 loads or fewer fleet, we're going to be hearing a lot more about Uber Freight. Have any of you used Uber Freight yet? Of any of our listeners? If you have, reach out to me, tdooner@abornandco.com. I'd love to hear your experience with it. I'm very curious as to what the user experience and the end result has been. I mean, does it work as well as the taxi thing? I like most other people, I use Uber all the time, especially for getting around the city. If you can do that for freight, that's an incredibly exciting thing. And, the new tool is entering a time. The new tool is entering a market where there are nearly twice, 6.6, as many loads available per truck than there were a year ago at 3.5. The Uberized freight and trucking apps could grow to a $35.4 billion market by 2025 in North America, according to industry reports. More surcharges are coming. Shippers upset as ocean carriers to impose new emergency surcharge. In June and July, shippers are going to see their rates increase as carriers look to make up for losses due to higher operational costs and a weak spot rate market. With rates down 5.4% from a year ago, carriers are seeking to levy emergency bunker surcharges, peak season surcharges, operations cost recovery, among other accessorial charges. With fuel costs up 35% from June 2017, most major carriers across the board have added EBS surcharges that range from $55 to $265 per TEU. Although contract rates are supposed to shield shippers from surcharges, carriers have been imposing them anyway. In fact, Chris Welsh, Secretary General of the Global Shippers Forum, GSF, had this to say. GSF is adamant that few transport operators in other sectors would risk imposing such short-notice emergency surcharges because of the likely strong reaction from shippers, including the loss of business. And it's not just ocean freight. Shippers are starting to get hit with surcharges from all sides as land and air carriers also increase fees. Blaming a hot freight market that's seen costs escalate due to rising fuel costs, capacity concerns, and operational overhead, on Monday, UPS imposed higher surcharges on oversized packages and palletized freight. According to the JOC, accessorial charges are only growing in number. In 1985, parcel companies had 5 to 15 surcharges on the books. Now, UPS and FedEx have over 40. That's like a CVS receipt's length of surcharges, and they account for 10% of parcel revenue. Melissa Runge, Vice President of Analytical Solutions at consulting firm Spend Management Experts, says they're becoming profit centers, much like the fuel surcharge was for motor carriers, and they're an avenue to change shipper behavior as well, end quote. The LTL market is also seeing its own wave of added fees as logistics operators like ArcBest introduce cubic minimum charges for non-contract LTL moves. Speaking of UPS, UPS is introducing new eco-friendly delivery trucks. UPS introduces a new pilot fleet of 35 all-electric trucks that look like they drove right out of a scene from Pixar's Cars. The fleet is a part of UPS' $750 million investment in alternative fuel and advanced technology vehicles. The company plans to add an additional 50 electric trucks it co-designed with Workhouse Group, Inc. to its U.S. fleet, as well as 125 Tesla semis. So, Big Brown getting a new futuristic look. And I don't know if you've seen these eco-friendly cars, but it looks like a giant brown Nissan Cube. Although where it didn't really work in the Nissan Cube size, it kind of does. It kind of does look good. The UPS trucks. I think when my kids see those, they definitely want one of these vehicles. So for me, I say good job, UPS. Go green. Apple to control more of its supply chain procurement. Apple looks to reduce supply chain costs and improve quality by sourcing their own raw materials. Screws, bolts, glue, all of that. Apple wants to control it all, and here's why. Traditionally, manufacturers would source third-party materials like the screws, attain a shipper's approval, and then apply their own markup of 10 to 15%. Well, Apple looks to capture those savings just as they plan to launch several competitively priced entry-level products. This must have manufacturers scrambling, though, because they're about to lose that big cut of the pie from Apple. Marine cargo insurance. Don't leave port without it. That's right, dozens of containers fell off a cargo ship last weekend. Here's the report from ABC Australia.
83 containers have already gone overboard. It looks like this one's next, and there are dozens more at risk of falling into the sea. Utes, scooters, fridges and nappies are just some of the contents believed to be inside the containers that toppled into the ocean off Port Stephens yesterday. Union officials are now questioning if they were tied down correctly.
Crews are being encouraged, forced or paid extra to do the wharfies work, and that is to lash containers. And so we just wonder if this is a component on this incident.
The untrackable containers sit just below the water's surface and pose an enormous risk to yachts and ships. And maritime services are warning skippers to be alert.
They are very difficult to spot, almost impossible, and they are several tonnes when they're empty. When they're full, they're an immovable force.
Bad weather meant scavengers weren't out looking for washed up treasures today, but maritime services say that's not allowed anyway.
It is not a finders keepers rule here. We haven't had any reports of gold bullion or Ferraris washing up, so if anyone's excited, we've found more so toilet paper and disposable nappies.
The ship is now sitting 20 kilometres off Sydney's northern beaches. The container ship won't be able to dock here at Port Botany until the weather improves. Maritime services will then be able to assess the extent of the damage and take stock of what's missing. Anxious retailers may well be checking their shipment tracking tomorrow. Lily Mayers, ABC News, Sydney.
The ship was en route from Taiwan to Sydney. It lost 83 containers after sea swells tossed the vessel around. There's a video of this thing getting tossed around on CNN, but we also have it on our blog. Again, that's abornandco.com/blog. We also have another article up, The Blockchain War. I'll probably cover that next week on here. And again, you can find all of these blogs, all of the news, and most of the things that we cover in written form at abornandco.com/blog. You can visit our website, check out our services, our team, etc. at abornandco.com. You can reach out to me at tdooner at abornandco.com. That's TDOOONER at ABORNANDCO.com. You can find this episode and all of the rest of ours on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play by searching Consulting Logistics, presented by Aborn and Company on any one of those services. You can go directly to our host, which is Podbean. That is abornandcompany.podbean.com. And that's it for me. I've been your host, Tim Dooner. Happy shipping and have a great weekend.